Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. The mindset that we bring to any situation plays a key part in overcoming challenges and really enjoying our unique paths in life. On Thoughtful Thursdays, I like to explore emotional topics that are relevant to CRNAs and other providers. I think of this as my therapy, and I hope you learn some tips and tricks that you can use along your own journey. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now on with the show. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays on the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. As always, I like to start these shows off with a quote that gets me thinking. Kakuzo Akakura wrote in the Book of Tea, "The art of life lies in a constant readjustment to our surroundings." I think we can all agree that we live in an ever-changing world. Particularly now, we've all had to readjust to new norms and realities in the communities around us. For my family, we had to adjust to my wife working primarily from home and remote learning for our children. Thank goodness we're done with that part. We adjusted to life in our own bubble by focusing on things that we could do together outside and away from crowds of people. Some folks have changed their routines, and some have clung to old habits more than others. I've begun to wonder about our reactions to change and how they can help or hinder us. After a mostly successful vaccine rollout, we've reached what is hopefully the tail end of the pandemic. If the only constant is change, why is it unreasonable to expect everyone to just go back to normal? Well, it's because everyone reacts differently, of course. While many of us have the same emotions, the degree to which people feel something or react is different for everyone. We all know there are endless possibilities on the spectrum. Here are some common ways that people react to change and how you can help those with whom you interact. Number one, people will feel awkward, ill at ease, and self-conscious when faced with change. This is pretty self-explanatory. When someone is in a situation outside of their comfort zone, they tend to act uncomfortably. We should be mindful of people's feelings during these types of moments. Number two, people will initially focus on what they have to give up. When reacting to a suggested change, it's perfectly normal for someone to feel a sense of loss. This is not much different from grief training when someone needs to be able to mourn their loss, no matter how small it may seem. I think we all witnessed this during the different phases of the pandemic when people were going through this grief process of what they had to give up to move forward. So we have to give people a chance to process what's happening around them. Number three, people will feel alone, even if other people are going through a similar change. Yes, it's normal for folks to have that why me attitude. In these moments, we should offer the support and connection that people need to feel understood. Number four, there's only so much change that people can handle. One change may be okay to handle, or even a couple, depending on the scope we're talking about here. But we all know people who have experienced that feeling of surrender when they just can't do anything else. Maybe you yourself have felt stuck, helpless, and non-productive. At these times, it's important to have a clear strategy for focusing one's energy on the few behaviors that will produce the greatest results. Number five, people are at different levels of readiness for change. Nearly everyone will experience some resistance to change, but some will be excited about it while others will dread it. Anticipate that not everyone is going to be on the same schedule here. Number six, people will be concerned about having adequate resources. We work in healthcare, so we're used to adjusting staffing ratios and dealing with drug and equipment shortages. If you're in an organizational setting such as a hospital, most folks will feel a need for additional resources to help them implement a particular change. As we've seen across many professions, more is being asked with less and less support. This has led to increased productivity for sure, but it's often at the expense of the laborers. If you are explaining a necessary change to others, you'd better be prepared to explain any lack of resources during that transition. Number 7, people will want to revert to their old behavior. It's only natural, given that the previous behavior was more comfortable, that people will hope to return to the way they did things before. This, however, runs the risk of losing what one has learned during the change. Help folks understand the need for that change to keep them forward focused instead of wistfully looking in the rearview mirror. Keep these common reactions in mind as you navigate the sea of transitions around you. Hopefully, this helps you to either find the support you need or provide it to others in an effort to help us all adapt to our ever changing world. Make sure you check out the show notes for the reference article for this episode and another short one on how our brains actually react to change, as well as a couple of books I have listed. The first one is Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard by Chip and Dan Heath. The next one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. As always, I'd like to thank you for listening to the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you found value today, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. I also want to hear from you. If you have a comment, question, topic that you'd like me to cover in future podcasts, make sure you rate and review on your podcast player. I check those all the time and I cover those questions in future episodes. I hope you'll join me next time. This is Bobby Jones signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.